Another longer.
All right. So good evening, everyone. Yes, it is. That's right. It's Sunday night again. This is your OAFP Bite-Sized Learning. I am your president, Mike Sevilla. I have no idea how that happened. But we're back. So we have a very exciting guest coming up. But before that, I do want to mention some OAFP programming that we have coming up that we just announced. So coming up on September 23rd, we have a Ohio Supreme Court candidate forum. So for those people who are running for the seats on the Ohio Supreme Court, so it's going to be 1:30 to 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But don't worry, because it's going to be recorded, so you can watch it on demand later. You should have gotten an email from the OAFP within the past few days. And yes, we are accepting questions for the candidates. So you should be able to email that to OAFP staff. And also for those who join live, our moderator, David Paragas, will be taking questions on the fly during that session. So this is a great and has been a great service for OAFP members. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out with the coming election. So also in the last few days, you should have gotten an email about this great handout and information for your patients called the 2020 General Election, A Guide to Voting in a Pandemic. That's also on the OAFP website. I know I'll be posting that information in my office. Has information from the Ohio Secretary of State, including information like voting absentee. So kudos to the OAFP staff for putting that together. And then my last announcement, and I've been talking about this for a while, but I think it's important. So it is our OAFP CME on September 30th, Building Cultural Intelligence to Break Down Racism. That's a virtual event. We have already a huge amount of registration for that. You can get more information at oafp.org. That will be September 30th from noon to 5 p.m. And also coming up, I just want to give people a heads up. 1 week from tonight, I'll be talking with the AAFP President-elect. Our friend, Dr. Ada Stewart, will be here. So we'll be talking with her. And 2 weeks from tonight, we'll be talking with Dr. John Cullen about Alaska Family Medicine. He's the board chair for the AAFP. So exciting programming coming up. But tonight, very excited. We'll be talking with our good friend, President of the American Academy of Family Physicians. You know him, you love him. Dr. Gary LeRoy is here. Gary, how are you, my friend?
Hey, I am doing great, Mr. President. From one president to another.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Gary, I remember a first meeting. I don't remember if it was like an OAFP board meeting or if it was at an OAFP event. I saw that you had some Apple gear, and I'm like, hey, he's an Apple guy, so it can't be that bad. There you go.
Yeah. Apple gear. Apple gear. This is not a product placement show. Okay.
Exactly right. We're not getting paid for them yet, by them yet. But before we start, I did want to thank you publicly. Just for being a friend, being a mentor, being a family medicine leader, and influenced so much to me and other people. It's just it's been great, and we're going to talk about a lot of fun stuff. But it's been so fun, just riding this ride with you, and it's been just so fun, just talking about life, talking about family medicine, just talking about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, this is like coming home to my family, just having a conversation with my family. So thank you so much, Mike, and thank you to the Ohio Academy of Family Physicians, the staff and the members. Because of you, I am where I am today. So can't thank you enough.
Cool. So let's just kind of dive into things here. So Gary, as I see students in my office, and you talk to students all the time. And one of the things that I tell students, is just don't forget where you came from. So Dr. Gary LeRoy, just tell us about life growing up, and then kind of how did you find your way to family medicine in the first place?
Oh my gosh, this is an hour-long show, right? Okay,
Exactly.
because this could take a while. I'll give you the abbreviated version. I am from Dayton, Ohio, very much Dayton, Ohio, born and brought up here. And didn't go far because I ended up going to Wright State University for my undergraduate training in medical technology. And that actually was what exposed me to medicine. In your senior year, you do a kind of an internship, a clerkship year in medical technology in one of the local hospitals. And I discovered the field of pathology and the pathologist. And I was just totally taken by the knowledge that these pathologists, these physicians had. And actually, working in the hospital environment sparked my interest in medicine. And the long and short of it is that is how I, working as a medical technologist, decided that, hey, I think I'll go back to school at Wright State and just take some geek classes. And I took some classes after work in biochemistry, and not realizing that was a pre-medicine course. And one of my friends, Charles Silas, who's now Dr. Charles Silas, asked me when I was going to apply for medical school. And I was like, I'm just doing this for the fun of it. It's just something that's interesting to me. And then one evening he came in and he threw this packet on my desk, and I'm like, what's that? He says, that's the application for the MCAT, Medical College Admission Test. Being the geek that I am, I decided I would take it. So I studied for that test, and I guess I must have done fairly well because I was accepted at the Wright State School of Medicine and a few other medical schools. And then I actually was so taken back by this. I didn't know what type of doctor I wanted to be, but I knew I wanted to be a real doctor. I didn't know what that really was. Loved surgery. Some of my mentors were surgeons, and then I spent some time with some residents at Good Samaritan Hospital, and I saw what they did. They did a little bit of everything, and they knew a little bit of everything. They took care of women and children and babies and old people, and they were involved in the community. And I was like, that's it. That's what I want to be. And that, of course, was the specialty of family medicine, and that's actually how I got here.
Wow. Wow. I didn't even know about the medical technology, because when my mother, when she came over from the Philippines, she was trained in medical technology, and my father's a surgeon. He's a retired surgeon. And I didn't know that about you. So I learned something tonight. So it's always great hearing people's stories and how they got there. And it's really, when I talk to patients, that's great. And when I talk to my friends and colleagues, it's always great to kind of get some of their backstory. That's always fun.
Yeah. It's always fun.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's always fun to know the background of individuals. They say that for every individual that you see that's successful, you talk to them long enough and you find out about their failures, how they failed to success. And again, I always talk about the gravity of low expectations, overcoming that. And so growing up in the community that I grew up in, it was kind of the expectation that we were just going to get a good factory job and make tires or car parts, and that would be good. But that's not how things turned out.
So are there other people in your family in medicine? Just kind of curious.
Absolutely not. No, my mother worked as a domestic, a maid for a family in the suburbs of Dayton, Ohio, and my cousins. I'm an only child. Okay, I'm not spoiled, but I'm an only child. They took factory work along those lines. So yeah, medicine, again, that was something very foreign to me. And about the only time that I set foot in a hospital was to deliver papers when I was a kid. And so I delivered papers at one of the local hospitals. And so that was one of my first, if not the first, exposure I had to medical setting.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that either. So yeah, that's great. So Gary, so how did you go from, family medicine physician to, kind of feeling called to, being an organized medicine and being a leader. And, I would imagine, like other things, that you were influenced by some mentors and things. But how did you, first get the bug to do leadership in family medicine?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I can almost tell you to the day and the hour, in that I was a resident in family medicine, and my residency director, Dr. Ted Wimslow, basically just kind of voluntold me to go to let's see, what was it called back then? I think it was the Ohio Academy of Family Physicians Congress of Delegates, or House of Delegates. And so I actually, went up to Columbus with him, and I walked into this massive room filled with family docs from all over the state of Ohio, with their different counties, displayed on their tables. And I was like, how cool is this? And that's why I learned about the advocacy of family medicine, and heard them talking about the specialty of family medicine and what it does and what it can do in the future of family medicine. And I remember being young and naive back then. I heard one of the kind of prominent elder statesmen of the academy pontificating about a resolution. He said, and the Constitution of the United States said blah 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 blah. And so I went back to my hotel room that evening. I said, I don't remember that being in the Constitution. I came back the next day, and I actually had to stand up at the microphone and say, that's not in the Constitution. And it was like, scratched the record. Everybody stopped, like, oh my gosh, is this kid doing drugs or something? And they were like, okay. And so afterwards, he came over to me and put his arm around me and congratulated me. He says, I really appreciate you, calling me out on that. And so that was when I really started my love for leadership in the academy. And I don't think I missed a House of Delegates since that time. And Dr. Winslow has been was and continues to be a mentor of mine. And then I have to give kudos to Ann Spicer, who took me aside and convinced me, even though I didn't have time to do it, to be treasurer, run for treasurer of the Ohio Academy of Physicians, and getting that leadership. Yeah, it's just like, oh my gosh, I got voluntold for that. I told her I can't even balance my checkbook. How could I be treasurer? But things worked out okay, and so that's how I got into leadership in the academy.
Yeah, I've told a story before about me. Like when I was at Neomed, and I went to family medicine interest group meeting because basically I was hungry and they had food there, and there was a speaker. Ross Black, and I was listening to it, and I was like, wow, that's kind of really interesting. I'm like, that's like kind of maybe the doctor that I wanted to be. And then, I would go to more meetings, and then, eventually, I forget who it was. I got dragged down to Columbus to an OAFP. I forget if it was like a student affairs committee or if it was like the full annual meeting. And just like you, Gary, I walked in the room, and you're like, oh, there's like these tents, with like these signs with counties on it, or regions or something like that. I'm like, well, what is all this about? And then I would hear the people speak, and I would understand a little bit of what they're saying, a little bit what they're not saying, and when you first experience it, I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice, like it's these people are passionate about more than medicine. They're interested in their communities and their patients and networking with other family docs, and that's kind of how I got the bug too. But it's really interesting talking to people about, how did you get first into this? And everybody kind of has a similar story, but it's always fun hearing about the people who mentored them and the people who influenced them and their different experiences. It's fun kind of learning those type of stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we all have those stories, and I really love the title of the show, bite-sized learning, because life is like that. You don't just kind of wake up one day and say, I want to be a family doctor, I want to be president of the Ohio Academy of Family Physicians, I want to be president of the American Academy. That's not the way it happens. Fate comes to you and mentors and angels come into your life in bite-sized chunks, and they kind of slowly push you in the direction that you really need to go in, not necessarily the direction that you want to be. Hey, if I would have followed my dreams, I would have been working at the Salem Car Wash here in Dayton, and that was not my fate. That's what I wanted to do when I was 14 years old. Yeah, I wanted to drive those cars, the total of about 10 feet. Yeah. So
exactly.
Fortunately, I didn't get that.
So we'll talk about kind of your year as president, but I something I wanted to ask, and it's something I ask a lot of family medicine leaders, and I get this question, you probably have gotten this question through the years too, is we have those colleagues out there, family medicine colleagues, and they say to me, hey Mike, that whole leadership thing, that's for you, that's not really for me, and I just really want to take care of my patients, and it's not really my thing to kind of go to meetings or all that kind of stuff. And Gary, I mean, you probably have colleagues, or you probably have run into people who say that to you. What's your advice to especially to family docs who say, hey, really, advocacy really isn't for me, it's for the other person? Like, how do you what kind of how do you respond to that kind of feedback when you get that from people?
Yeah, I get that quite a bit. It's kind of like, and I'll use the analogy since this is I think there's something like an election coming up soon. And, people that complain about how things are going in their community and their state and across the nation, and you ask them, so did you vote last time? Well, no. Well, why not? Well, I'm too busy, or it's a waste of my time. And it's like, well, if you didn't make sure that your voice was added to the choir, then you really don't have any reason to voice your complaint, because you weren't there, you weren't involved. And so it's critically important to not just brush advocacy off because you say you're too busy. We need to be part of the discussion, as they say, you need to be, and I'll use that Hamilton term, you need to be in the room where it happens. And if you're not in that room, you don't know the discussion that's going on. And you can't add your voice like I said, hey, that's not in the Constitution. Okay, and it's like, whoa, that got everybody's attention. And so we really have to all be involved. I was sitting here at this desk writing some notes to some of our members and thanking them for joining the Academy and having their voice heard, whether it's a voice saying, wow, the AAFP is doing a great job, or, hey, you guys are a bunch of morons. Well, I want to know why you feel that way. I want to know how you got to that point in time. So it really is critically important that we're all involved, not just coming in doing our job. We're professionals. That's what separates us from other people that have jobs and careers, is that there are a few professions like medicine, law, clergy that are self-policing, and they create their own laws and boundaries for their profession. But that's because they have discussion. They talk with one another and say, this is what's the best thing for our community and the people that we serve. And that's why everybody really needs to be involved.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. So my guest here is our good friend, Dr. Gary LeRoy, President of the American Academy of Family Physicians. And I'd like to kind of move topics a little bit and just talk about, you being, the president. I mean, that's awesome. And I've heard you speak about this before, like the rest of our lives, there was pre-pandemic times and then the pandemic times. Share a little bit with the audience, typically, in pre-pandemic times, what the AAFP president does, because I know that that involves a lot of travel and media and going to DC a lot, and describe a little bit, kind of the pre-COVID times of what your responsibilities are as AAFP president.
Sure. It's somewhat difficult for people to understand how much time the AAFP president spends away from home. On average, it's about 200 to 250 days out of the calendar year that you're on the road or away from home, involved with AAFP duties. Mainly traveling to the Beltway of Washington, D.C. for giving testimony and advocating on the part of our members, and then visiting the various chapters to install their officers, their fellows, and really just meet with our members where they live, work, and play. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to go across the nation and talk with our members and learn something about what their challenges are. And so I did a lot of that during my president-elect year, and I was really looking forward to doing more of that during my year as president. I went to Washington, D.C., South Dakota, and Alaska. Those were the three chapters I went to as president. And when I was in Alaska, as I came back through Seattle's airport, that's when things were locking down. And around March 15th, that's when I came back to Ohio, and really that's where I stayed, because everything was canceled. Trips for the academy were canceled. Trips to various states were canceled and such. And so that's when we entered into this COVID era. As a matter of fact, when I was boarding the plane to South Dakota, that's when I received a text message from the American Academy of Family Physicians saying that they were going to put out a primer for our members about how to prepare for COVID-19. And so they wanted me to contribute to an article. So as I was on the plane, I actually wrote that article and finished it and sent it to the Academy when I got to South Dakota. And so that was I think that was on Wednesday, and then Friday we published that for our members, and that was the first in a sequence of COVID-19 articles that have been on our website since since the January timeframe. So again, it changed the whole dynamic of what I did, or my expectations were for being president of our academy.
I've heard a lot from members. And of course, you've heard a lot from members about, the academy and advocacy with regards to telemedicine. AAFP has done a lot of programming on this. They've had a lot of resources and things that have been made available for members. Speak a little bit about, the academy's kind of gearing up and really making resources available for telemedicine, and what's the response that you've heard from members from from the academy standpoint as far as telemedicine, how family docs are utilizing telemedicine during this pandemic? I have done so many interviews with the media since the pandemic hit. At last count, I had 85. Last Monday, I did my 85th interview with the Washington Post about
COVID-related issues. But a lot of these things have to do with getting those vital, critical resources to our members, like early on, making personal protective equipment available to our members, the testing kits available to our members. And then when the nation went onto a lockdown, we realized that, well, we still have this obligation to our patients. Well, how are we going to do this? Well, there's this little thing that we had in our toolbox called telemedicine. Like, we knew about it, mostly used by the rural docs in our nation and things, long distance care. But few of us had really used it the way it was capable of. And so we started advocating, along with other medical organizations, for payment for telemedicine. We saw in my particular practice and many practices, 3/4 of our patient volume just went away, just flat out went away. And then we very quickly put information and resources out to our members about how they could utilize telemedicine to bring some of those patients back in a virtual sense, and gave them tips of how to do that while we were in the background advocating for equal payment for the face-to-face office visit. And we got that. And so once that happened, then we found that a lot of our members and a lot of our patients decided they really liked telehealth and the telemedicine resources, be it just like we're doing, where we have audio and visual, as opposed to just using the telephone. So again, it was a life-saving or a practice-saving intervention to be able to get paid for doing these services. And we're currently advocating to continue payment throughout the public health emergency and beyond. So we do not want telehealth to go away, but it doesn't replace that doctor-patient relationship, because now my practice has pivoted from 3/4 of the telehealth visits being the bulk of my practice, to just flipping to the opposite way, where I may have 1 or 2 telehealth visits in a session. So because patients realize the value of the patient-doctor relationship, they want to get out of the house. They want to talk with us and such. And so really, and we did a virtual town hall last Wednesday, as a matter of fact, and thank you, those of you that joined in, and that we announced our telehealth toolkit, so that our members know how to best use telehealth and get reimbursed at the highest rate possible for use of that resource for their patients.
Now, of course, we're looking for kind of some permanent solutions, especially when it comes to payment, of these visits, and and advocacy still has to happen during a pandemic. So I would imagine the Academy is advocating for members to use things like Speak Out or electronic type of advocacy, phone calls, that type of thing. Is that kind of what the Academy is trying to push for members to further educate legislators to get to a more permanent solution?
Yeah, absolutely. Advocacy did not slow down. If anything, we pushed our foot on the accelerator all the way to the floor of advocacy. It's actually stunning to learn as a board member, and more so as president of this academy, the amount of communication that goes from the academy in Leawood, Kansas, to the Beltway, to the White House, to the Congress, and to the agencies, especially CMS in Washington, D.C. It's just reams and reams and reams of position papers, advocacy letters, and that's going to be actually, as board chair, I will be the one signing those letters. And I would say that on an average week, we're probably sending about 10 different communications, if not more, to the Washington, D.C. area about advocacy issues. And it's really important that it not just be a singular voice coming from the AAFP, but also when we say that our members feel this way, and we're telling your story as members about challenges you have in your practice, it's very good to have our members sending similar letters through Speak Out to their senators and representatives, be it emails, text messages, handwritten letters. Handwritten letters really get a lot of attention because it takes some time and effort to do that, and the use of a stamp, and phone calls. And when they're back in their districts, you need to visit them. You need to knock on their door and tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it and who you serve and the number of individuals that you encounter in your workday that are voters and individuals that need these services that they may not be aware of. They have a lot of other things that they have to do, and sometimes they just really do not understand what we do. Or if they say, well, primary care, that's not a specialty. Well, yes, it is. As a matter of fact, we celebrated our 50th year as a specialty last year, and they're kind of stunned by that. And if nothing else, the COVID pandemic has revealed the intrinsic value of the specialty of family medicine, because we've been called into service to backfill emergency rooms and ICUs and deliver babies and child care and maternity care and such. And they're like, oh, that's you guys can do all that. Yeah. But we don't have people coming into our office backfilling for us, because very few, if any, areas of medicine can do everything that we do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you've heard the stories. I've heard the stories of family docs locally and around the country just stepping in and stepping up and into those positions that are needed. Because our communities need us, because we're family docs, and that's what we do. And it's got to be fascinating from your standpoint, Gary, just hearing these stories nationally about these docs who just kind of, they just do what's needed for their community. It's
Right.
got to be very cool just to kind of hear those stories.
Yeah, to hear those stories and to meet those individuals, and through the town halls, let's see, last Wednesday's town hall was our 15th town hall during the COVID pandemic. And just to meet these amazing individuals that work in rural communities, work as in the ERs across the country, that are leaders that advocate for us in the practice of medicine. Some of the interesting people, like one of the interesting docs that we spoke to, actually contracted COVID-19, and he told his story of how quickly that changed his life. And he spent time in the ICU and that long road back to recovery and such. Or those family docs that set up tents out in their parking lots so that they could test patients and individuals in their communities for COVID-19, the challenges that they had with that. So again, all these, as I always say, these heroes and sheroes, real life heroes and sheroes that come disguised as family docs, and they're in a community near you. And really, we are so proud of our members. And when I talk about writing those little note cards, and I'm sitting at my desk, and these are little note cards, and they say that they're from the president of the academy, and I hand write these things to 10 members that are randomly selected each week. So each Sunday morning, that's what I do. I sit here and I write back to them, to let them know that not only have we recognized them, but that we're here for them every step of the way, and we need them.
That's so fascinating. That's so fascinating that you do that. Thank you for doing that. So do you pick the people, or the people pick for you, or how is that process?
Yeah, actually, when I started this gig as president of the academy, we have the opportunity to meet with all the marketing and communication team. and they kind of want to get to know me and what I'd like to do. And I remember sitting at this restaurant in Kansas City, and I said, well, yeah, first of all, I got this idea. I really like to do something like podcasts or something, so I can really stay in contact with the members so they can hear in real time what I'm doing and what's going on. And it was kind of like, well, first, the tumbleweeds came rolling through and crickets, and I was just like, okay, well, this isn't going over at all. It's just like, bad idea. Well, how about this idea? Let me throw this at you. How about, could you people call to our member resource center at the Academy. And so they communicate through emails, through letters, through social media. And I said, well, why don't we do this? If you could get me 10 random names and contact information and send that to me every week, I just like to write to them. And it was kind of like crickets too. But finally I convinced Mr. Esposito to do that for me. And it became wildly successful. And so I said, I don't want just the happy letters and happy communications. It got people angry. I want those too. But I want you just to randomly select those things. And so they send me these individuals that have appeared in publications for our Academy, have written, have just made a phone call or anything. And so they tell me how they contacted them. And I write those 10 note cards and put in my business card so they can write back to me. I become fast friends with some individuals and such, and individuals sometimes that are very angry. And it's just I call them back, and it's just like there's always kind of the same response. I call and I say, hey, this is Gary LeRoy, from the American Academy of Family Physicians. And there's kind of this pregnant pause, like, really? You're calling me? What the heck? You wrote my fiery letter and you have the nerve to call me? And by the time we hang up, they're like, I really appreciate the fact that you paid attention. They really just want to be heard and to be acknowledged that they matter. And so that's what I do, from afar. And so really when people used to ask me, well, what are you going to do as president of the Academy? What's your agenda? I says, my agenda really is to see what hand fate deals me. Because of the great leaders that you read about through history, it's not that their agenda made them great. It's the fate and the circumstances that they were tossed into that made them great leaders. Abraham Lincoln would not be, Abraham Lincoln had it not been for the Civil War, and so on and so forth. So I would say, without any effort of my own, people will remember this time in history of the Academy because of this this pandemic that we all went through. And it's like, well, who was president back then? Who was the guy that got drew the short straw to be president then? This guy. Yeah, this guy. So
yeah, this guy.
Yeah. That guy.
Yeah, this guy.
That guy.
That's right.
We got the short straw.
There you go. We got this, Gary.
Yes.
Yeah, we got it.
Yeah, we got this. We got this, man.
Yeah. There we go. Or the other way.
Hey. Yeah. But it's been a joy. It really has been a joy. Of course I miss all the opportunities to travel and to do all the things in person, but I think that I've connected with more of our members through some of the social media. I do my little tweets every weekend too. So basically the tweets are to tell people what I as president have been doing each week. So I'm on week 51. So people are like, well, what the heck do you do? Well, you look at my tweet and you can follow it all the way from the first week, and you see what I do each week as president of the Academy.
Yeah.
Because I often wonder what they did anyway,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my guest on the line has been Dr. Gary LeRoy, President of the American Academy of Family Physicians. And Gary, I just kind of want to pivot to, kind of a more serious topic. This year, will also kind of be known as, a year where awareness of things, like systemic bias and institutional or systemic racism, and declaring racism a public health emergency. We can share with the audience here from an academy's perspective. The academy did declare that, and just kind of share with us, kind of the board's thinking or the academy's thinking as as kind of the months have went on since the springtime, as far as why the academy wanted to raise this issue to such an importance as far as racism and how the academy has made it a priority.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Mike, because as I said earlier, sometimes fate deals you a hand that you could not imagine. And not only did we have the crisis of the pandemic, but we had a crisis within the crisis. And it started, the flashpoint was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, with the death of Mr. George Floyd at the knee of a uniformed officer. So when I say 8 minutes and 46 seconds, everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. If I were to utter the words, "I can't breathe," everyone knows what you're talking about. And it revealed something systemically eating away at the fabric of our nation, and it's been eating away at that fabric for years, 400 years in the making, actually, with human bondage and such. And so when we talked as people of color and people that are marginalized by society of the disparities in healthcare outcomes, oftentimes it fell on deaf ears until Minneapolis, Minnesota. And then that was the first time in my life, and probably in the overwhelming majority of our lives, that we have witnessed a human being murdered before our eyes because of the video that was taken with a mobile phone. And we were horrified collectively. And after the shock, we realized that this could not go on, and that organizations all over our country, all over the world, start putting out statements saying that racism can no longer be tolerated. And these are the reasons why. And we won't tolerate it within our organization. And I never thought I'd see the day when the Washington football team would take the name off of their helmets and their logos and such, because last year they said there's no way we'll ever change that. But because of the collective witnessing of this atrocity, that changed. And Aunt Jemima changed. Things that, the little lady on Land O'Lakes, the Native American lady, was taken off, and on and on and on and on, because they were waking up to the reality that people of color, people on the margins of society, live with every day of their lives. And so I remember on May 31st, the Academy issued that statement, and they sent it to me to do the final edits on it, and I did some heavy editing on that. And I said, boy, I'm probably going to get a lot of pushback about this, and I did. But the overwhelming majority of our members and the individuals that we serve were behind our statement. But we vowed as a board of directors that it would not just be a statement. We were going to do more than just give a statement. And shortly thereafter, we put together a special town hall on institutional racism. And we started really getting our toolkit on implicit bias out to our chapters so that we could teach them how to teach about implicit bias. And we have several other things in the making. As a matter of fact, we have a series of videos that will be coming out within the next several months about healthcare disparities in minority populations and such. And also, we had established in 2017 our Office of Diversity and Health Equity. So we were at the dance long before other organizations wanted to come to the dance. And so we were on the forefront of that, and I'm very proud of that. So again, those are just a few of the things that we have been doing, but we realize that we serve all. We serve all people from all walks of life, and that is our responsibility, because that's what we do as family physicians.
Yeah, Gary, you've already kind of answered this upcoming question already, but I'm sure that you've heard maybe from members or maybe from family docs as well that, you know, this issue is something that the Academy should not get involved with. It is divisive. It is not something that, I hate to use the term, is in our lane. How do you respond to members, or how do you respond to feedback from members who say, hey, you know, this is not something, an issue that the Academy should really touch? Yeah.
So one of the few members that pushed back at me, there were about maybe 10 letters or things that were sent to the Academy that the Academy brought to my attention. One in particular that I remember, one of the first ones, said that I need to keep my opinion and my politics to myself. And, you know, I wrote back to that member and let them know that, you know, I appreciate his opinion, but we serve all. And that I was not calling our members racist. Because because we used, and I had to really dig with some of these members, because their response was that, one, I am not a racist, and you're calling us all family physicians racist. And I kept reading that statement over and over. I'm like, I don't understand where it says that all family physicians are racist. And the second thing that really floored me was that these members that I spoke to that said, I don't see any racism in our country. One in particular said, hey, you know, I'm 70 years old, and in my 70 years, I've never seen racism. And I'm thinking to myself, what planet do you live on? Because I see it every day in every way, in very subtle microaggression and, you know, subtle forms and everything. You know, something as simple as saying, boy, you're very intelligent for a black person. That's not a compliment. Or, you know, just systemic racism in the way of, you know, you look at GFR data on a patient, and it says, well, if they're African American, well, you can accept a lower rate. And it's just like, where did that come from? You know, what's the evidence behind that? So my kidneys can fail longer, and then you'll intervene, you know, when I'm farther along in my disease process. You know, I'm writing an article on colorectal cancer. Well, why do African Americans present at a later stage in the screening process, you know, in a more advanced stage with colorectal cancer, and die at twice the rate of their white counterparts? And that includes for other individuals of color. Why is that? And why do women with breast cancer die at a higher prevalence than their white counterparts? You know, as far as African Americans and things. Okay, we can't just shrug our shoulders about that and say, well, that's just the way it is. We need to find out why that is and make it and stop it. And so again, it's something that the Academy has always taken very seriously, and we continue to take it very seriously. And I'm very proud of the fact that the overwhelming majority of our members, and not only of the Academy, but in the physician community, in the healthcare community, have acknowledged that, yes, Black Lives Matter, and that's not diminishing anybody else's life. It's just saying, well, yeah, we acknowledge that your life matters also. And if there's an injustice in your life, that's an injustice in all of our lives, because you do matter. And this pandemic has shined the spotlight on the fact that it doesn't matter my social status and how much money I have. If I'm not taking care of the people that are bagging the groceries and driving the Ubers and driving those trucks and doing all those service things, well, my life is going to be adversely affected. I need to take care of all my family that exists on this planet. And it doesn't really matter what their complexion is, because race is a social construct, and it doesn't really say who I am or what I'm all about and such. So again, it's something that we all have to lean into. And I was talking about, and I'll let you get back to talking, Mike, but just a little known fact is that when they had the Million Man March in Washington, D.C., really, it was 400,000 people of color, for the most part, that were there, and that was a long time ago. But because of the George Floyd situation and subsequent other situations across our country, we've had, at last check, there were about 26 million protesters around the globe that have marched and continue to march peacefully and protest peacefully to not let this go away, let this moment go away in the quiet of the COVID pandemic. And of those 26 plus million protesters, the overwhelming majority of them are not people of color. We've woken up to a reality that these individuals of color and people that are living and existing on the margins of society have been living all of their lives. So this cannot stand.
Thank you for those thoughts there, Gary. The time is going quickly, and I'd like to pivot to maybe just kind of, maybe to start to think about some closing thoughts. And I know that you're just kind of on the downside of this AAFP President thing. Have you started to
blame duck? Yeah.
started to kind of reflect on your year, or what you're going to be remembering from it or taking back for it? Or is it too soon, or are you going to need more time to kind of reflect and look back? Just curious.
It's somewhat melancholy. It's a lot of work. At points, it was very exhausting, physically and emotionally exhausting. You always wonder if you're doing the right thing, or you have done the right thing, or said the right thing, because I'm my own worst critic. But I have truly enjoyed this year as president of the American Academy of Family Physicians. It's unbelievable. It is absolutely unbelievable. And people ask, well, how did you get there? And it's just like, I don't know. It's because of those angels that I met along the way, many of them through the Ohio Academy of Family Physicians, that had faith in me, in my capabilities, and nudged me in the right direction. And I am truly blessed because of this journey. What next? Well, I become chair of the board of the AAFP, which is a lot of responsibility. As I think it was Mike Munger, one of our past chairs, said, well, the president is the forward-facing face of the academy to the public, but the chair is the one that tells him or her what to say and how to say it, and sets the agenda for that president. So that's the one that's behind that curtain, pulling all the levers and things like that. So that's kind of scary that I'm going to be behind the curtain pulling those levers and such. But I've enjoyed the somewhat limited fanfare that I've had being in front as president and such. One of the things that I haven't had an opportunity to do much at all, but I'm going to do it now, is my President's Medal. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I put that on, baby.
Nice.
My bling still. I don't think I'll give it back. I think I should just get it permanently. I'll just tell them.
Oh, wait, let me get mine over here.
Yeah, get your bling, man. Get your bling.
There you go.
There you go. We got our bling.
We'll be the guys there.
Yeah, and she had a hat and turn it sideways, Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Hey,
Yes.
man.
Somebody's gonna screenshot that, and
there you go.
It's gonna go viral in a good way
Bling.
later.
There you go. Yeah. So really, I'm thrilled with this, and I have another 3 weeks to go. Live at large and go out swinging. And then turn it over to Dr. Ada Stewart, another of our own, Ohio rocks. But I'll just kind of end by something at our town hall. They always ask me to say something at the end, and something just kind of dropped into my consciousness at the end of our town hall. And I don't know what I was doing. I was looking at something about trenches, in the trenches. That's one of our articles that's written. And I say, okay, trenches, what are trenches? And then I said, I've heard of foxholes, what are foxholes? And so, I don't know, I just kind of started thinking about that. And, we talk about us as family physicians being in the trenches of medicine. And we remember that trenches are strategically created by a group of individuals to defend themselves against an anticipated oncoming common enemy. And so this enemy, are the legislative battles that we have, COVID-19, just all these things that just keep beating at our door. And so we need organized medicine to help us with that. But in contrast, foxholes are something that's rapidly dug by a single individual as a kind of a last-ditch defensive measure against an enemy that's rapidly approaching. And so what we want to, the message that we want to get to our members is that they provide us with powerful tools to advocate on their behalf. We want to, in turn, provide them great resources to fight the good battle against all these things that just keep hitting us in the practice of medicine. And we want them, because knowing that they're on the front line, we want them to realize that they're not in a foxhole alone. We're there for them, and we'll always be there for them as an academy. And that's why we serve, and that's why I do the things I do, and the leaders of our academy do what they do. So thank you, all the leaders that are out there, or the Ohio Academy of Family Physicians, and any other leaders in medicine that are out there fighting the good fight in the trenches of family medicine. You're not in the foxhole alone. So
cool.
That's it.
Cool. That is great closing thoughts right there. So
all right. Drop the mic.
Gary, there you go. Gary, thank you so much for the time. And it's been so fun just kind of watching you and kind of how you've been reacting with things. And it's been in our chat room even here tonight saying that the right guy for the right time. So that's Gary LeRoy. So I know we'll talk soon, but thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Mike. You're doing an amazing job. And thank you for everything that you do for the Ohio Academy and also the National Academy. This guy's living large at the AAFP too, chair, what was it, membership?
Oh,
membership.
Yeah, that was you too.
This could be yours in a few years, man. All righty, Mike. Thank you so much.
All right, so that ends our program tonight. So thank you so much for joining us. And you can get more information at ohioafp.org. So we're out. Good night, everybody.